that's a very interesting question, and I totally agree with you that the pandemic has drastically changed the way organizations are looking at their IT. One of the main impact that I've seen since the last 2 years, let's say, is around working from home. That's definitely something that is new for some companies where during a certain period of time, maybe 100% of their employees had to work from home. That's something that we've seen. So I'm French, and that's something that we've seen particularly in the Europe, where working from home is not necessarily something that is part of the culture. And when it comes to IT, this means that the IT environment of those companies needs to be to be able to work from home. So in terms of, for example, security, that's definitely a very big challenge that those companies had to figure out how to mitigate any risk, I would say, but also having infrastructure that are able to address such number of requests. If we think about very big banks, for example, or very big companies, they always had a VPN endpoint or endpoint that allow their employees to access their internal IT environment. What is the major difference with the pandemic is how many people will access at the same time those infrastructure. The companies had to completely rethink the way their IT environment is accessed by their employee that is working from home, while still being able to provide a kind of good employee experience, if I can say it like that. The second challenge that I can see is around access control. For more or less the same reason. Since those employees are not working in the office anymore, the kind of controls that we can put in place on, let's say, on-premise network is also something that has changed. IT engineers, IT operation people had to rethink and review the access control posture and the controls in place to address. So I think that security awareness or security training is definitely one of the main challenge for any security organization since, let's say, the very beginning of the existing of security, basically. That's a very, very big challenge because we know that we only, quote unquote, need one employee to click on a link or to open a malicious attachment for the entire network of the company being compromised. So I think that it's a balance between awareness and, of course, technical controls that are in place. When it comes to awareness, the best way that I've seen so far for large organizations, for example, is to have a kind of culture. Security is not only about like having awareness training, let's say every month or for every new joiner. Security should now be part of the core values of the companies. And that's something that should be normal, basically. When I suspect something, I raise my hand, I script my fire, I share it and report it, etc. That's something that should become part of the culture, which is still a challenge for security organization to implement that in the culture. And that's the reason why sponsorship from top management is definitely interesting. Another example of, again, from what I've seen from my experience is having demos and being transparent. Like, for example, if I ask to a developer or to a infrastructure engineer to do something, they need to understand why they are doing it from a security perspective and be transparent with those people that have the, let's say, sensitive access on our IT environment is definitely very important. So sharing them a couple of scenarios that, let's say, an attacker could be able to do, and that's the reason why we need to implement those controls, or that's the reason why we need to implement those processes, is definitely something that helps in raising the awareness of those kind of profile in companies. So I think that, so my area of expertise is security. So I think that from a security perspective, one of the big trends is around artificial intelligence, or let's say at least around automation. Topics around, for example, incident management, incident detection, DDoS protection, etc. All of that has become a little bit more mature in terms of controls and in terms of detection capabilities for some specific patterns. What we need now is also to think about patterns that we were not able to anticipate in our, let's say, threat modeling or in our risk analysis. And I think that this is where artificial intelligence will definitely help us. When we have an application, when we have a software that is supposed to work in a specific way from a business perspective, not from a technological perspective, having artificial intelligence capabilities that are able to say, hey, I think that this user is doing something very strange because I've learned for, let's say, 1 month, 2 months, maybe 6 months, what your user are doing in your application, how they are using it. And I think this one is definitely suspicious. It's something that will help us from a security perspective, because that will also help us in the decision-making process and help us in the, let's say, automation process. When we have an incident, and particularly critical incident, we know that time is very important. We want to respond as fast as possible. We don't want any moment between, ideally, that's the target state. We don't want any moment between when we detect an incident and when, let's say, we block the attacker. So by having those capabilities and, I would say, reliable artificial intelligence, we'll be able to automate the response of incidents. Another trend that is what I humbly believe is important for security is being able to anticipate threat. Having a risk management posture, putting in place controls to mitigate the risk, etc., is definitely the priority. But if we want to raise the bar a little bit on security, we should also be able to anticipate threat. And I think that today's threat intelligence capabilities are definitely important for companies to say, hey, I'm using, let's say, this set of technologies, and I've seen, let's say, on the dark web or whatever sources coming from a threat intelligence management application, this technology is being focused by attackers. Maybe we must be careful. Maybe we must increase our monitoring capabilities for a certain period of time, not every time. And that's also, I think, a trend that I can see. So I think and that's particularly true for security. We never stop learning. And I don't necessarily have a podcast, or a book to recommend. What I would recommend in terms of training and being aware of what's going on is first to attend events like yours. That's definitely a way for us to stay current on the new trends, new technologies that are being used, but also follow trainings. And we shouldn't forget that security people, like a security skill set is not a specific skill set. It's a subset of the IT skills. I had a friend of mine who said to me, cybersecurity degrees should not exist. That should be a specialty in an IT degree. And I strongly agree with that. I think that when it comes, for example, to cloud, and we've seen that the usage of cloud has really increased for the past years, and it will still increase for the next few years. We need to really understand this technology and those technologies and how to leverage them from a security perspective. I'm very surprised sometimes to see CISOs or security engineers that are only, quote unquote, using services from cloud providers that are dedicated to security. Where in fact, if we really know services, if we really know how the cloud is working, we can improve the security posture by using services that are not necessarily security specific, but that can be leveraged by security. So following those trainings and learn from those technologies is definitely something that I would do. So hello everyone, my name is Quentin. I'm the Director for Information Security Engineering at Careem. I'm in charge of the security engineering at Careem, who is basically leading the control that we are putting in place at Careem. I'm very excited to be speaking about the challenges that people are facing in the MENA region and more particularly in the security industry at the Enterprise Cloud and Data Center Forum that will happen in between May 25 and May 26, 2022 in person in Dubai in the UAE. And I'm looking forward to see you. Do not hesitate to come catch up with me. I'm always very happy to connect with anyone and discuss about security.